Hello again, gamers. Welcome back to the Board Game Captain. I'm the Board Game Captain.
I'm Lynn.
I'm Juliana.
And today we are going to be reviewing, talking about, and showing you a little bit how to play the game Root. Now, Root is a kind of, it's kind of a war game, but not really. There's sort of, it really depends on which faction you're playing. There's a bunch of different factions, and they all play very different. This is a 4-player asymmetrical game that kind of has some area control, kind of has some resource management, hand management, kind of has a lot of stuff going on.
Engine building.
Yeah. And like I was going to say, if you're playing the Vagabond, you almost have some light RPG elements as you go adventuring and collecting items. It's so strange. There's so much going on. But this is a game by Cole Wehrle. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. I'm going to show that up there. And it was published by Leader Games. And it is a game for 2 to 4 players, ages 10 and up, for 60 to 90 minutes. Now, let's start there. So, okay, now, they have a suggested order in which, depending on the number of players you're playing, which factions you should choose. So if you're playing a 2-player game, you're supposed to play the Marquis de Cat and the Erie Dynasties, which makes this closest to being like a
tabletop battle game.
Yeah, like a war game. It makes it closest to being an area control war game. Whereas at 3 players, you add in the Woodland Alliance, which then it's not really a strictly war game anymore because the Woodland Alliance is really different. They're not about conquering at all. They're about like spreading sympathy and then eventually having an uprising.
The revolt, yes.
Yes. And then if you have a 4th player, you add in the Vagabond, who is like a light RPG character running around playing Yojimbo and freaking like getting the different factions to like be like, hey, I'm your buddy, I'm going to help you out fighting them. And like, haha, no, I'm helping them to fight you. And yeah, and it's so weird. I've never played a game that's quite like this. I mean, we've got a lot of asymmetrical 2-player games. I've never played one that's like 4-player like this, where every faction is a totally different game. But yeah, this is. Now, the age is 10 and up.
Yeah, that's way young.
Yeah, that's too young.
I would say 14 and up.
I think a 10-year-old might be able to get the Marquis de Cat, but it's specific. Like, you can't play this with a group of 10-year-olds. Like, there's some factions that are easier than others. I think the Marquis de Cat's the easiest. It's the most straightforward. After that, the Erie Dynasties. I think, like, the order they tell you to use them is the order of complexity. But, like, I don't know if I would have a 10-year-old being the Vagabond. I think they'd be lost. So.
Yeah, I don't think that.
So what age do you guys think? What do you?
I just said 14 and up.
Okay. I think that's pretty good. What do you think?
Yeah, Juliana? I would totally agree with that.
14. Okay, so that might be a bit of an underestimate. Usually, most of these, I usually think
they overestimate.
Yeah, they're usually overestimates. This is kind of weird. It's the opposite.
Yeah.
Especially considering how long it takes to learn,
I mean, and that every faction is completely different.
Exactly.
So you can't, unless like the adults playing had played the factions previously, and they're helping the 10-year-old, but still, the 10-year-old would be like on their own. They can't even look at other people's turns and kind of figure out what to do. I'm
going to agree with you. I think the 14 is a good estimate. I think we're all kind of in agreement with that. The 10 is way underestimate. Now, the 60 to 90 minutes, okay, so 60 maybe if you're playing it 2 players. This is generally a longer game. I would say after playing it a couple times, at 3 players you can get to 90 minutes, but 4 players is going to go over that 90 minutes, even if you've played it before. Would you guys agree with me on that? So not that accurate. Not terrible. Not a terrible estimation of the time, but this is more like an hour to 2 hours rather than an hour to an hour and a half, especially considering the huge amount of variance in time depending on the number of players you're using. Would you guys concur? So let's have a look at some of the components in here. Spoiler alert, they're awesome. The components in this game are really well done. The production is off the charts. So here is the board. Now the board, okay, let me unfold this. It unfolds a little strangely. So here is the regular board. Now the regular board, as you can see here, is made up of many clearings, and it's got all sorts of really lovely illustrating on it. And here's the thing. it's two-sided. The other side is winter, and it's not just aesthetically different. You see, this is a more advanced game where on the regular side, on the spring side, you have the clearings are clearly marked what little woodland factions are in control of that clearing, whether it be mice, rabbits, foxes, whatever. Here they're blank because you have these little chits that you mix up and it becomes different for every game. So after you've played the more basic version, this gives you something to grow into. In addition, it's also just not the same board. The configuration of the clearings is not the same.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say that I think in the springboard there's more 3.
Yeah, and they've got like the river is in a different place. The river kind of goes in a different area on the springboard. So it's that right there is really awesome. This is a level of extra that they did not need to do, but they did, and it's awesome, and I love them for it. So the next thing we have is the player boards. Now the player boards are unbelievably valuable. And the reason these things are unbelievably valuable is, in addition to having spots to put your cards and your items and whatever else you're using, each one of these boards, they're two-sided. Now the back side gives you a little cheat sheet to tell you how to set up your faction, while the front side gives you a cheat sheet to remind you of all the things your faction can do. And this is so important since each faction is unique and different from one another. And when you're learning a faction, you really, really need it. It also has reminders for everything from how many points you get for doing certain actions to how many extra cards you get for uncovering certain symbols. And these are just incredibly useful. So here we have the Marquis de Cat board. Here we have the Woodland Alliance board. And again, as you can see, these are totally different from one another because they play totally different. Here we have the Eerie Dynasties board.
It shows you their complexity on the
Yes, it says complexity, aggression, card wealth, and crafting ability. So you can get an idea on how they play. So for instance, like the Woodland Alliance has a complexity of high, an aggression of moderate, a crafting ability of high, and a card wealth of moderate, while the Marquis de Cat has a complexity of low, aggression of moderate, card wealth of moderate, crafting ability moderate. This is probably the easiest beginner faction. The Eerie has complexity low, card wealth low, aggression high, because they have to attack just about every round, and crafting ability of moderate. Now the Vagabond is the final one, and probably one of the most different from the other factions, and he has a complexity of moderate, aggression moderate, card wealth moderate, and crafting ability low. So that is the 4 player boards. Then we have 2 rulebooks, not one. They did something that you see in a lot of war games where they have one rule book that it teaches you how to play, and it's very well done. For the most part, I didn't really have any problems with this rule book. There's lots of diagrams, lots of illustrations. It really gets you up and running pretty quickly. And then we have the Law of Root. This rule book has kind of decimal point headings and areas just to specifically look up certain rules. I actually don't like this rule book as much as I like the one for learning to play, and usually just reference the learning to play book myself. But it is nice that they gave you 2 possible ways, because different people learn differently. And that's kind of a cool thing that they did. Gesundheit. And also talking about how different people learn differently, they have this little sheet here that allows you to run through a guided couple of turns that would teach you how each faction plays. So you could learn by doing, which is actually a really cool addition. I mean, what do you guys think on that?
I didn't even know that came with that.
It's really cool, though, isn't it?
No, it's awesome.
Then we've got the cards. There are many different decks. The main deck is these cards here that have a back. They have lots of cheat sheets. They have a cheat sheet for each player for each faction so that you can look at what your opponents can do, which is really nice. And there are some special decks for each individual factions. Like this is a special deck just for the Vagabond, as an example. The cards are nice. The illustrations are amazingly adorable. Oh my god, are they so fun. They're linen finish. What do you guys think on the cards and the production
they're
there?
Fine.
Yeah, they're fine.
I find linen finish cards to be harder to shuffle, honestly.
I don't understand that.
I don't know.
But I love these cards, and I love the illustrations on them.
I love the illustrations. My favorite is the root tee with the little fox stickers,
Yes.
the little mugga tee.
Well, here's the root tee.
That's another one. Yeah, they have different ones.
So these are really awesome. You've got some 12-sided dice, which have 0s, 1s, 2s, and 3s on them. These are for combat. There's 2 of these. They're pretty standard 12-sided dice. And then we've got lots of wooden punch-out chits for various things, as well as we have a little raccoon meeple for the vagabond, and lots of little meeples of other animals for the different factions. We have orange cats for the Marquis de Cat. We have blue birds for the Eerie Dynasties, and we have little green mice for the Woodland Alliance.
Or pieces of toast, as they kind of look like.
They do kind of look like pieces of toast. They're kind of fun. But so that is everything that comes in the box for Root for the most part. So now what we're just going to do is we're going to take you over to the table. We're going to run you through a few turns of this to give you a feel for how this game plays. And then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about how this game feels. And we're going to review it and rate it. Okay, so here we can see a 4-player game of Root set up. Over there we have Juliana playing the Marquis de Cats. Juliana, wave your hand around over there. Right over there. And then over there we have Lynn playing the Woodland Alliance. Over here I will be controlling the Vagabond, and over here I will be controlling the Eerie. So without any further ado, because there's way too much to explain in how each of these factions works, what we're just going to do is we're going to jump into it. We're going to run you through a few turns, but as we're going through the turns, we're going to narrate our turns, telling you not only what we're doing, but what we could be doing, what our options are. And without any further ado, let's get to it. Juliana, why don't you go first as the Marquis de Cats?
All right. So the first stage is the bird song, which says I place 1 wood at each sawmill. I have 1 sawmill at this time, so I'm going to place 1 wood here. And then in my daylight, first I get to craft using workshops if I'd like. I would not like to craft. And then it says I can take up to 3 actions. I can either battle, march, recruit, build, or overwork. And I am going to pick which actions I would like to take. So to start off, I'm actually going to build an extra sawmill.
So now she takes a sawmill from her track there, which reveals a +1 point, which means she's now on the board. Everyone else is still at 0 points. And she gets to put that sawmill anywhere she likes, as long as it is in a clearing that she controls. And to control a clearing, you have to have the most of your warriors there, which at the moment is all but 1 clearing on the board, because the Marquis de Cat starts with kitties everywhere.
Yes, it's very nice. Perfect. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to recruit, which means I get to place 1 warrior at each recruiter, and right now I just have the 1, so I'm going to place him here. Mm-hmm. And then for my third action, I am going to march, which allows me to move twice. Mm-hmm. So I am going to take these 2 guys and move here once, and then pick up this guy and move here.
Ah, okay.
Okay. And then I am going to move on to the evening because I took my 3 actions, and it says that I can draw 1 card, plus if I reveal any +1 cards after I've built another
yes,
building.
In addition to points on Juliana's private board over there, some things will reveal things that say get an extra card at the end of every turn. So our deck is over here.
Yeah, so I'm going to take my 1, and that ends my turn.
Okay, so the first thing that I can do with the Woodland Alliance, the first thing is revolt, but I can't do that yet.
Well, what do you need to revolt?
I need sympathetic clearings to revolt.
So you have no sympathy on the board yet, yes.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spread sympathy. And to do that, I have to, for my supporter deck, I have to discard a card. I'm going to discard a fox card to place a sympathy in a fox clearing.
Yes, now this clearing has a little fox symbol underneath it, so it is a fox clearing. So now some of those foxes are sympathetic to the rebellious cause.
And that gives me 1 victory point.
Ooh, and now Lynn is on the board.
I can spread sympathy as many times as I want, so I am going to do it again with a mouse clearing. And I'm going to spread here, which gives me another victory point.
And yeah, you have to spend that sympathy. You got to spread sympathy in clearings if you can that are adjacent to the one you're already at. So since she spent a mouse, it had to be, since there were a couple of mouse clearings that were adjacent to this fox clearing, it had to be adjacent to those.
And I'm going to do it a third time for another mouse clearing. Ooh. And I'm going to go here.
Okay. Now those
I get another victory point.
Those sympathies are very important because if anyone wants to move warriors into those clearings, they have to pay a toll of the appropriate faction symbol of what that clearing is. So fox, mouse, or mouse. They have to give a card of the appropriate type to Lynn to add to her supporters, or a bird card. Or if they don't have those, they have to reveal their whole hand to Lynn to show that they don't have them, and Lynn gets to take a random card from the deck.
So now I move on to the daylight phase where I can craft, mobilize, or train. The only thing I'm going to do is mobilize, which I'm just going to add cards from my hand into my supporter deck. And I'm going to put all 3 of them in there. And then I go to evening, where I have military operations, but I can't do any of those yet because I don't have officers. And then the second part of evening is to draw 1 card, and that's it.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to the Vagabond. So the Vagabond gets to first refresh items during their birdsong phase if they had any exhausted, but none of their items have been exhausted yet, so they don't need to refresh any yet. The particular Vagabond I'm being is the Ranger, who gets to start with some boots, a torch, a crossbow, and a sword, and he has the ability to use the torch to repair 3 items and then immediately end the daylight phase if he were to want to. So now, the next thing he can do in the birdsong phase, which is the first phase of the turn, in addition to refreshing items, he can slip into an adjacent either clearing or forest. The Vagabond is the only guy allowed to move in forest, and he starts in a forest. So I'm going to slip into this clearing here. And then I can take my actions. Now, to take most of my actions, I usually have to exhaust my items to do things. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to exhaust my torch item that I started with, this one here. I flip it over to the other side to show that it is exhausted, and I'm going to search the ruins here. So here are the ruins. I remove the ruins from the board, and I get, I got a sack, which is nice. That lets me add that to my sack track on my board, which allows me to have 2 additional items that I'm carrying, which is very nice. So now let's see, what else would I like to do? I'm going to exhaust my, I'm going to exhaust my sword because I can use any item for aid, to give aid to a player in my clearing. I'm going to give the Marquis de Cat this card, which is the aid that I wish to give them. That will make my relationship track for the Marquis de Cat. I'm just going to show this here. I will get, because I just need to give them aid once, to go up 1 in their esteem, which gives me 1 victory point. So I will get 1 victory point. I'm going to move that up. And then, let me see, is there anything else I can do? Not really. There's not really much else I can do. So I'm going to just end my turn. I'm going to move on to the evening phase, where I get to draw 1 card. So I'm going to take 1 card to take to my hand, plus I could get extra ones if I had more coins, but I don't have more coins. Then I'm going to, I would have to discard down to 5, but I only have 3, so I'm fine. And then if I did not have enough of the satchel items, which I do have one of, so I can hold plenty of items, I would have to discard items until I had less than 6 plus 2 per of the bags that I have. So that's it for the Vagabond. Now I'm going to move on to the Eerie Dynasties over here. So during the Bird Song of the Eerie Dynasties, the first thing they would do is if their hand is empty, they would draw a card, but they have 3 cards. Then they add 1 or 2 cards, their choice, to the Decree, which is a bit of engine building up here that they have to do in order to continue building up their actions, the things that they will do. All right, so I have to add, during the Bird Song here, I have to add 1 or 2 cards to my Decree. I am only going to add 1. I'm going to add a bird card into my move, which means birds are wild, so they don't reference specific clearings. Then if I had no roost, I could place a roost and 3 warriors on the clearing with the fewest total pieces. But I do have a roost, and I have my bunch of warriors already over here, so I'm ready just to move on to the daylight. So during daylight, the first thing I can do is craft using roost, but I am not able to do that, so I'm going to move on, and then I resolve my Decree. So my Decree is the engine that I'm building up here at the top of my board. The first thing is recruit, and I have a recruit for a bird symbol, which means I can recruit anywhere that I have a roost. So I have 1 roost on the board over here. And my leader that I started with is the charismatic leader that allows me to recruit 2 warriors instead of 1 each time I recruit. So I'm going to place 2 warriors in that area. Then I have a move, which again is a bird move, so I can move from any clearing that I want to, any number of my my warriors. So I'm going to choose to take 4 of my bird warriors here, and I'm going to move them to this adjacent fox clearing there. Then I have a battle, so I have to declare a battle somewhere, and it is a bird card in the battle. Therefore, I'm going to declare a battle there. So what I do is I'm going to roll the 2 dice. I get the higher number in damage up to the number of warriors I have there, while my opponent, the defender, will get the lower number in damage back at me, again, up to the number of warriors they have there. So let's roll them. And I rolled a 2 and a 1, which means I get to do 2 damage. Now, there is only 1 warrior there, and there are no buildings, because extra damage could be done to buildings or tokens. So the Marquis cat will lose their 1 cat there.
I'm actually going to use my field hospital.
Now the field hospital is a wonderful ability. Now you got to discard either a bird or a fox. There's a fox card. So now with the field hospital, instead of losing her warrior, they go back to her citadel over there on her side of the board, which is really nice. So now, on the other hand, though, she did do a damage to me, which I lose 1 of my bird warriors, but now I am in control of that area. I am now done with my Decree. So I move on to my evening, where I would score victory points based on the rightmost revealed bonus victory point symbol on my track here for Roost, which I don't have any revealed yet, so I don't score any. And then I can draw a card and discard down to 5 cards. So I'm going to draw a card. That will bring me up to 3 cards, so I do not have to discard, and I'm going to be good to go.
Okay. On my last turn, I forgot that I used this wood to build my sawmill, so just taking that back before I start my turn. Okay. So it's now my bird song, which allows me to place 1 wood in each sawmill. I have a sawmill here, and I have a sawmill here. And then I go into my daylight. I can craft using my workshops. I'm going to choose not to craft anything right now. And then I get to take any 3 actions. So I am going to build, which requires 1 wood. So I'm going to take this 1 wood here. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to build a recruiter here, which gets me 1 victory point.
Okay. And there we go. That puts you up to 2nd place at the moment.
All right. And then I am going to overwork. Okay. So I have built And I am going to spend a bird card, which is wild, to go ahead and get an extra wood in a matching clearing. So it doesn't matter, but I'm going to put it here. All right. And then for my third action, I am going to build. And I'm going to go ahead and build another recruiter.
And how much does that one cost you?
This one costs 2 wood, which is why I overworked. And then I'm going to build it here.
Oh, well-defended clearing indeed.
And then...
Does that get you victory points for building
it? It does. I do get 2 victory points.
Nice.
And then it also allows me to draw an extra card at the end of my
also
turn.
Nice.
So I'm going to take a 4th action by spending a wild card. And that is going to be recruit. So I get to place 1 warrior at each...
At each recruiter.
Yes.
Which you've got, what, 2?
I've got 3.
Oh.
All right.
I see what's going on here.
And then I get to draw 2 cards because I now have that extra card, and that ends my turn.
Very nice.
Okay, so for my bird song, I'm going to spread sympathy. I need to spend 2 supporter cards now. So I'm going to spend a bunny and a wild card to count as a second bunny. And I'm going to go here, and I get 2 victory points.
Okay, brings you all up to 5.
And then I am going to move on to my daylight. And what I'm going to do is add the card in my hand to my supporter stack. And then I'm going to draw a card, and that's my turn.
Okay, so for the Vagabond, they're going to refresh the 2 items they used. Then they can slip into an adjacent space if they want to. And they're going to slip over here into this forest. Then, now that it is their daylight, they're going to exhaust their boot to move into this space here, which now you have sympathy there, right? So I have to give you a mouse card.
Yes.
So here you go. Then I'm going to... Let's see, I'm going to exhaust my torch to explore, to get the item from the ruins and clear the ruins out. So there we go. And I got another boot. Let's see. And then and that is all I'm going to do with the Vagabond this daylight phase. So I'm going to move on to the evening, where they will draw 1 card. I'm trying to get the right cards for them. And then they are all finished. So then we're going to move on to the Erie dynasties, which so first they could draw if they didn't have any cards, but they do have cards. So they're going to add 1 or 2 cards to their decree, and they have decided to add a fox card to their build option here. So that's all they're going to do, just the 1 card. Then, if they had no roost, they could get a free roost and some warriors, but they have a roost. So now we're going to go on to the craft phase here, which we don't have anything they can craft. So then they moved on to resolving the decree. So they recruit, and they have 1 Erie to recruit in, so they're going to get 2 warriors where they have an Erie. Then they have a move, which allows them to move from any clearing they want. So I'm going to, let's see, where shall I move? I'm going to move 2 of my bird warriors over to here, and then I have to give you here you go, here's a mouse card to add to your sympathy, because you do have, you have your guy there. That is a thing. So then I'm going to go on to my battle. So I am going to declare a battle on your sympathy there. I'm going to declare battle on the Woodland Alliance. Now the Woodland Alliance unless you have an ambush, can't do anything to me because you don't have any soldiers there. So I just have to make sure I roll one of these dice has... Well, actually...
I get the higher.
You get the higher one, though you can't hurt me. I have to have none of them be zeros, basically. And it's a 0, so I actually am unable to destroy it. Whoops. Then I'm going to move on to my build, which allows me to build one of my Eries in a fox clearing. I have some guys in a fox clearing over here, so I'm going to build an Erie there. And then during the evening phase, I will gain victory points. I now actually have uncovered one of the bonus victory points by building that Erie, so I'm going to get 1 victory point during my end phase, and I will draw 1 card. And now this is really it. This is how it goes. Everybody's got their own way of playing. It's all a little different. The Vagabond goes around and tries to give cards to people to make them like him to get victory points, while also, if people ever use their cards to build these items here, the Vagabond can trade for them and use them to get more items and be able to do more actions. They play a little slowly, but then can explode later in the game. The Erie builds up an engine to slowly be able to do what they want, and the more roosts they get out, the more points they get every turn. They also start fairly slowly, but later when they start uncovering +2 or +3 or even +4, and their top one is a +5 points at the end of the turn, they'll start getting lots of points at the end of their turn. Now, whereas those are both kind of slow to start and then speed up later, the Woodland Alliance and the Marquis de Cat are a little bit opposite. They start out fast, just being able to get straight up victory points for building certain things, but then it gets more and more expensive for them to build those things as they go on, so they slow down in the later game. The Marquis de Cat starts with the entire board, while the Erie starts with only 1 space, but the Erie slowly spreads out, and the Woodland Alliance actually starts with control over nothing, but later when they cause an uprising, like if they were to cause an uprising here, for instance, they get to gain points, put a base there, kill everyone there from enemy factions, and get some free soldiers there. Now, they're not really a conquering faction. They usually only have a few spaces with soldiers, but they're really good at defense because they always get the larger number on the combat dice. So that's kind of how this game goes. It's every faction is like you're playing a completely different game. So now we're going to head back. We're going to talk about how this game feels and how it plays, and we're going to rate it and review it. Okay, welcome back. So that was how you play a game of Root. There's really so much to it that this video would have to be about 2 hours long to go over every individual thing that each faction can do. We just wanted to run you through a few turns to give you a feel for it. With games like this, it's really necessary. This is a game where I feel like it's in the heavyweight category, not because any individual faction is a heavyweight in its rules, but because of how each faction is totally different. And if you want to do well, you not only need to know how to play your own faction, you need to know how all your opponent's factions are played, so you know what they're doing when they're taking certain actions if they're playing a slow game and they're going to come up and stab you in the back. And you need to know that. It's pretty important. So let's talk about some negatives, things that we don't like about Root first. Who wants to go first on that?
I mean, I just have one thing that kind of bothers me about Root. The board just isn't flat, and I know that's like something that we could correct by putting books on it.
Yeah, we totally could, yeah.
But
minor gripe.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah.
But in regard to the production, and I think that's a production issue, that the board doesn't lay quite flat right out of the box. But again, yeah, we could probably put some heavy books on it and weigh it down. It hasn't really been an issue, because with your little guys on it, they don't slide around. Right, they have enough heft. But also, the rest of the production, the artwork, the quality of the cards, the little meeples, the wooden meeples.
The meeples are adorable.
It's all amazing. Yeah. Like, the production on this game is fantastic. There was a lot of buzz about this game before Gen Con. We picked up this one at Gen Con 2018, and there was a super amount of buzz going on. And I was interested from the buzz, but also when I saw the production, I was like, oh my god, that game looks amazing. Like, the production really caught my eye. But I'm going right into positives. Back to the negatives. Did you have any negatives you wanted to draw attention to?
My only negative is, it's with the board again, but it's something different.
Okay.
It's the little symbols that show you what type of clearing it is.
Yes.
Sometimes it's not always, like, I can't sometimes it's difficult to see, basically. It might be a me problem.
Okay.
Like, because like the bunnies and the foxes are kind of small.
Okay.
And they're also not all in the same spot in every clearing. So sometimes I have to get up and move pieces and look to see what kind of clearing it is.
I think, okay. I haven't had that problem, but them not being always on the same side of the clearing, that I could see as a viable complaint, because you're not always looking to the same side of the clearing to look for them. So you do have to look around. I get that. That's a gripe. It's a valid gripe. My only negative is just part of the nature of the beast, that this game takes a long time to teach. But the reason it takes a long time to teach, and I think I want to say the first time we learned to play this game, it took us an hour.
At least.
Before playing.
Yeah.
But it's just the nature of the beast, because each faction is totally different. You feel like everybody should know what each faction does, or they'll be blindsided at some point during the game. Like when the Woodland Alliance does a revolt and kills everybody into space, someone's gonna be like, wait, they can do that? You know? So you have to know that they can do that. You have to know that they have that capability. Or like when the Vagabond decides to turn traitor on someone and start killing them and getting victory points for every one of their warriors that they kill. And you're like, oh, they can do that? Again, you gotta know what everybody can do. So the first time anyone plays this game, and this is again, it's just the nature of the beast, it makes it a little less approachable for something you would play like on a whim. Because this is not the sort of thing you'd be like, oh, okay, we have an extra half hour or an hour, let's pick another game to play for game night. It's not the game you're going to pick there. It's the kind of game you'd say, okay, we're going to have a game night, we're going to play Root, and then if we have more time, we're going to play some other smaller games. So in that regard, and again, that's a very minor complaint for me, because that's the only complaint I could think of. Because let's get into the positives. I'm going to start with the positives. Okay, I already touched on this. The production is amazing. 2, the gameplay is fun. Like, I really, really like all the factions I've tried. I've not disliked any of them. I like that since they all play so differently, everyone can find a faction that's their favorite. Like, I love engine builders, so I'm all about the Eerie. Love the Eerie. It's my favorite faction because I love building the engine and then doing what the engine says. So that's some big ones for me. How about you guys? Who wants to go first on you guys?
I don't know.
Positives.
Yeah, I mean, the whole game, like, kind of touching on the gameplay again, I don't feel like there's ever a time where I'm sitting there bored. Like, I'm always constantly thinking about what I'm doing, and then also paying attention to what my, what everyone else is, my opponents, thank you, are doing, because it will affect me. So, in the game that we just played, I was moving my recruits and everything closing in on Josh, and then Josh moved out of that clearing and then attacked one of my other clearings. And so it's just like, it's fun, like you said.
It's very dynamic.
It is, and it's one that requires thinking, but it doesn't ever feel like I never get analysis paralysis when I'm playing this game. Like, you have enough time to think about what you're doing as the turns go around.
Well, I also think it's because, you can only do things according to the cards in your hand. So you generally...
Or the actions on your board.
Yeah, and once in a while there'll be a situation where you can do this or that, and you're like, okay, which one is going to be better? But most of the time it's just like, okay, these are my cards. This is what I can do. There's nothing new... analyze.
Something else I like about it, so it's the closest I would say, I know every faction plays differently, but the closest type of game I would compare this to is like an area control war game, because at least 3 of the 4 factions have some of that in what they can do, that area control war game aspect. But unlike a lot of other area control war games, there's no possibility for player elimination in this. Everybody has a way to come back. Even if you wipe everything they have off the board, there's a way to come back onto the board. And you don't win, really, necessarily by killing each other's warriors. You win by victory points. It's the first person to 30 victory points. You get 30 victory points, the game's over. So it's this weird mix of Euro game mechanics and Ameritrash game mechanics in like a happy marriage. And
it works.
It does. It just does. It works. It's, because it's like the wars are fun, but they're like, they play a back seat to your actual goals. And a lot of times you start wars to distract from what you're doing over here. It's like, oh yeah, I'm fighting you. But in reality, it's because I'm building all these Eries over here and I'm going to win that way. And I mean, it's also, I mean, okay, so another thing I want to talk about. So this is asymmetrical. And there's no way to make a thoroughly balanced asymmetrical game. But I kind of feel like any faction could win this game. And usually the one that wins is the one that people overlook. Whatever anybody thinks, oh, they're not really a threat, and everybody spends most of the game overlooking him, that's the person who's going to win.
That's what's happened in all the games that we've played.
But every faction, you're like, oh, if you ignore them, they could really get something going and totally slaughter. You can say that about every faction in this.
Yeah, you really could.
Because there's so much going on.
Well, I think the players are supposed to balance the game by keeping the other players in check.
Yes.
I think that's the balancing of it.
Yes. So, and I mean, that's pretty amazing to have it work that well with 4 completely different working factions. Overall, I would say I really like this game a lot. I'm gonna, you know what? I'm already halfway there to rating it. I might as well just throw it out there. I'm giving Root 8 out of 10 stars. I really enjoyed this game a lot. I think this game is a experiment that went really, really well for the designer. It's definitely, I mean, it was definitely, this was an experiment by him, 100%. But this could not have gone, I don't know if this could have gone better in regard to what he was trying to do than it did. Like, it was an amazing experiment. It came off really well. I'm very excited to play the expansion that we have in the other room because I want to try the other 2 factions out. Also, the idea of possibly having 2 vagabonds is a really cool idea that you can do in the expansion. If you like old school area control war strategy games, I would definitely recommend this to you as a new take on that, and especially because of the ridiculously different the asymmetrical factions are. So awesome. I love that each one plays totally different from each other, so no matter what kind of game in this regard that you're into, you can find a faction that fits your play style. Okay, who wants to go next?
I'll go. I'm gonna give it a 7.
Okay.
And that's because I've only ever played the Woodland Alliance, and
you really like them, though.
Yeah, even though I know how the other factions work just by playing with other people playing the game, and I just don't think that I would enjoy the other factions as much.
You might. You should give them a try at some point.
Well, I'm not saying I'm never going to play the other factions. I'm just saying that
you got hooked on the Woodland Alliance. You're like, I want to be the Woodland.
I've only played the one, and it really clicks with, I guess,
your play style.
My personal play style.
Well, you won with the Woodland Alliance one time, and you really, I was going to say, the first time you played with them, you couldn't figure out how to work them until the end of the game, but then you were immediately like, we need to play this again, and I need to be the Woodland Alliance again, and you did, and you won that game. So, like, I guess, yeah, it just clicks. Well, that's what I'm saying, though, about how everybody can find a faction that clicks with them, which is really cool. So, Juliana, what do you think? You've been a few of the different factions. What's your opinion?
I love this game. I would put it in one of my favorite games of all time.
Oh,
I'm giving this a 9 out of 10.
Ooh.
And this is because I played as both the Eerie and the Marquita Cat, and I loved both of them. Playing the Marquita Cat again today, I was just like, ooh, I remember what I like about this. And I can see myself winning if I played again. And then also watching Lynn play the Woodland Alliance, I'm just like, Lynn, let me play the Woodland Alliance. I really want to try that out. And then the expansion, there's just so much to this game. I feel like it's one that I'm not going to get bored of because I can play something different every time.
Yes.
And I love it. I love the theming. I mean, basically anything with woodland creatures like Everdell and I love...
The theme is great.
All of this this game. I will say it doesn't get a 10 out of 10 because I can't play this with all of my friends. I can't be like, oh, let's play Root because a lot of them would be turned off by the at least an hour learning curve. But otherwise, for me, as a heavy gamer, I love this game. So, 9 out of 10.
Wow. Okay, so that is 7 stars from Lynn, 8 stars from me, 9 stars from Juliana. Nobody had anything negative. Nobody had a negative score. Nobody even had a mediocre score. All these scores are very positive. 7 is like it and we'll play it anytime. 8 is love this game, really enjoy it. 9 is, oh my god, this game is amazing. All of us really enjoyed Root. So if any of this sounds interesting, sounds like something you would be into, I definitely recommend picking up and trying Root if you can find it. I know it's becoming a little hard to find right now. I know they're going to be doing another printing. I mean, they'd be crazy not to.
Right, yeah.
They're going to be doing another printing, so this will be hitting stores again at some point, or it's going to be on Kickstarter again. If you think this sounds like fun and you see this come up for another Kickstarter for a reprint, or if it shows up in stores, get it. Because this is really good. This is a really good game. So, yeah. So if you enjoyed this review and tutorial and you'd like to see us do more like it, be sure to give it a like, share it on all forms of social media, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Kaptain. That's Captain spelt with a K on YouTube. And leave any comments down below if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, either on the game of Root or this video. And until next time, game on.